Slater Crusaders, welcome to the show. Glad you're here. Coming up, we're going to talk with Michael Caputo, used to be an advisor to President Trump. He has a very long background, but in particular here, he is the author of a new book and a new documentary called The Ukraine Hoax. So he's going to outline the corruption between Obama, Biden, and Hunter Biden in Burisma in Ukraine better than anyone you've ever seen on the media do. They're not even close. They're missing so many key elements to the story here. And Michael Caputo is going to fill in all those cracks. So that's coming up in just a few minutes. First, I want to start here with this clip of Bernie Sanders. This is how you know the media is against Bernie Sanders. Check this clip out.
Your agenda has promised free health care for everybody, free college tuition, and to pay off people's college loans. The price tag for that is estimated to be $60 trillion over 10 years, correct?
Well, look, we have political opponents.
You don't know.
Come up.
You don't know how much your plan costs?
You don't know. Nobody knows. This is impossible.
You're going to propose a plan to the American people and you're not going to tell them how much it costs?
Oh, the fake outrage. You're going to prepare. Oh, Nora, give me a break. Now, first of all, my one criticism of Bernie here. You know a politician is not going to answer the question when they start out their answer with, well, look. Like, no truth is coming from that point forward. But the main point here is the media's got the fix-in against Bernie. If Nora O'Donnell liked Bernie Sanders, first of all, she'd never bring it up, but she would help him make the case, or she'd make some comment that, Senator Sanders, your plans are bold and ambitious. Like, that would be the question. Or she'd say, you know, Senator Sanders, heartless Republicans are pouncing on your plan. Bernie, what can the people do to help Republicans understand that you can't put a price tag on our children? Right? It would be some nonsense like that. But they don't like Bernie. I mean, never forget this debate moment. This was on the last CNN debate.
Senator Sanders, I do want to be clear here. You're saying that you never told Senator Warren that a woman could not win the election.
That is correct.
Senator Warren, what did you think when Senator Sanders told you a woman could not win the election?
I disagreed. Bernie is my friend, and I'm not here to try to fight with Bernie.
What a total hit job. And I love the clip of Bernie's like, geez, guys. I saw a lot of people giving props to CBS, the first clip we played. A lot of people giving props to CBS for asking hard questions to a Democrat. No. That's not what they were doing. They were trying to take out one candidate. They're not going to start talking like that to the Democrats. They're not going to ask hard questions to the Democrats. They're just going to ask questions like that to Bernie, to knock him out, because they love Elizabeth Warren. But Elizabeth Warren, her plans are just as insane. So Bernie's plan may cost, what she's like, 60 trillion or something. Elizabeth Warren's are like 58 trillion. So like, and she can't pay for it or account for it either, right? So what's the difference? I want to talk more about Elizabeth. You've heard this audio by now. It needs to be getting way more attention, so I'm going to play it again. Here's a guy in Iowa confronting Elizabeth Warren.
My daughter's getting out of school. I saved all my money. She doesn't have any student. Am I going to get my money back? So you're going to pay for people who didn't save any money, and those of us that did the right thing get screwed. Of course we did. My buddy had fun, bought a car, went on vacations. I saved my money. He made more than I did. But I worked a double shift, worked extra. My daughter's work, she is 10. So you're laughing. Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. We did the right thing, and we get screwed.
Awesome. Every year's got a Joe the Plumber moment. We need more from that guy. Where is that guy? We need more from him, and we need way more of that guy, right? Of guys like that standing up and saying, wait a second, this makes no sense at all. What that guy did right there, that is the attack against Warren's entire ideology, right? Because what he does is he makes crystal clear the distinction between personal responsibility and, not personal irresponsibility. Almost every time, it was a bad decision to take out those student loans. It's a bad decision. These student loans are a disaster. Well, I mean, we'll talk more about them in another day in general, or specifically. But it was probably a bad decision for you to take out $200,000 of student loans. This is a clip from one of my new favorite stand-up comedians, Neil Brennan, about student loans.
I was lucky enough to have dropped out because I realized early on that these student loans are basically small business loans, and the business is you, and you're maybe not such a great business. Look, if they call them small business loans, no 18-year-old kid would ever get the loan because it's a bad idea for a business. If you had to go to the bank, to the small business desk and ask me, like, yeah, I'm going to need $150,000, they'd be like, all right, what's your business idea? All right, here's the idea. For the next 4 years, I'm going to get blackout drunk. But also, I'm going to get a degree in sociology. They'd be like, get the f*** out of our bank. You're like, that's fine, I will, but just know that I did have a way to pay you guys back. It's going to give you $80 a month for the next 240 years.
All right, so you took out this giant loan. Now you got to pay it back, and that stinks, even if it's $80 for the next 240 years. But some people worked really hard and made massive sacrifices to get out of that debt. And the people who didn't make good decisions, whether they made the bad decision to get the loan in the first place or made the bad decision to not pay it off properly, they're the ones who get bailed out. And some people, and these people aren't considered, but some people didn't even go to college or go to certain colleges because they didn't want to take on the debt in the first place. So where's their bailout? They can't, right? And then who's going to pay for the bailouts? The people who made the good decisions, the good financial decisions, are going to pay for these bailouts. It's a total disaster. But the root of this is personal responsibility. Do you remember this came up a couple weeks ago? We did a segment on, so I was scrolling through Huffington Post, and there were two stories. They were almost right next to each other, like 2 or 3 stories apart from each other. And the first story was about Lizzo, and how Lizzo is beautiful and challenging traditional beauty norms and body positivity and all this stuff. And Jillian Michaels was in trouble, the fitness guru. She was in trouble for saying that it's not healthy to be overweight. Right, so that was the whole thing, and Jillian Michaels is fat shaming, and she's a terrible person, and Lizzo is amazing, right? That was the first article. Like 2 stories down on the Huffington Post was a story about a guy whose brother died from a heart attack because he was so overweight, and his heart was already scarred because he had a previous heart attack and didn't even know it. And it's this tragic tale of a brother helplessly watching his brother get more and more obese over a decade. And I read these 2 stories back to back. I said, Guys, like, what? Like, something's got to give here. So the reason, and we did this a couple weeks ago, but the reason the left has taken their stance on body positivity is because conservatives are the people of personal responsibility. So the left, therefore, has to be the opposite of that, which is no responsibility ever for anything in any aspect of life whatsoever. No one can ever be held accountable for their actions. Does that make sense? Stay with me here, right? So conservatives, maximum personal responsibility. And progressives look at that and they're like, okay, well, we can't do that. We got to be the opposite of that. So no personal responsibility ever. That's the opposite extreme. Everything has to be the result of cosmic forces or unjust systems or oppression or the legacy of slavery or white privilege or whatever. Nothing can ever be about your decisions. Whether it's a criminal, right? It's never the criminal's fault. Criminals are the real victims. Whether it's people who are overweight or, in this case, people who make bad financial decisions. Conservatives believe in systems that reward the responsible. The left prefers to champion the irresponsible. So the man who pays off his daughter's student loans, that's responsible behavior, he's punished. The person who spends his money on new cars and vacations, he gets rewarded. It's backwards. But here's my point. In our mind, it's backwards. To the progressive, it's completely right side up, right? We're looking at it, it's completely, right? We look at it completely different ways. So to the progressive, it's that man is the unresponsible one, irresponsible. That man is the one who's out of line. He's being mean and he's being greedy, which is the classic Thomas Sowell line, right? To a progressive, the politician is not greedy for wanting to take your money, but you're greedy for wanting to keep your money. That's what that moment's all about with Elizabeth Warren. It's at the root of it, it's about personal responsibility. Rick Moran wrote a nice article about it, and he said, that right there, that's about what kind of country you want to live in. Big picture, it's about what country you want to live in. If that mentality wins, if the Elizabeth Warren mentality wins, I'm going to paraphrase Rick Moran a little bit. He said, you're irresponsible if you live your life responsibly, and you're a chump if you play by the rules. He said, it's not Lyndon Johnson's great society, it's the irresponsible society. And that's not the kind of country I want to live in. True story. Mike Slater. More coming up. Hey, Slater Crusaders. Coming up, we're going to talk with Michael Caputo about Ukraine. We'll get to some impeachment stuff, but I want to take a minute here and talk a little more about Kobe Bryant. So yesterday, when we talked about Kobe, we talked about identity, right? And how Kobe went his whole life basketball player, right? That's all I am. I'm a basketball player. His whole life, I'm a basketball player, basketball player, basketball player. And then he retires, and now you're not anymore. And you're going to have an identity crisis. You're going to have a question of who am I? And he, fortunately, poured himself into his faith. He was raised Catholic, went to church, and he poured himself into his family, his wife and 4 daughters. So yesterday we talked about our identity, your identity. Who am I? I got to remind myself all the time, right? I got a radio show, now we're doing this TV show. It's all new. Get anxiety from time to time. First thing I think about when I wake up in the morning, it's like 4:25, my alarm goes off, just boom, like like mind's racing, heart beating, like, all right, we gotta go, game time, right? So I'm giving myself some grace because it's all kind of a new thing, right? And once I get the routine down, it'll get better, but just mind starts racing right away. And this happened years ago for me, this kind of wake up anxiety, heart pounding. And I had to tell myself a different story. I had to remind myself of my real identity. And for me, and everyone's different, someone gave me this advice. I forget what word he did. He had some mantra, I forget what it was. But mine was, and it worked, I'd be laying in bed, right? Child of God, child of God, child of God, child of God, child. And I just tell myself for like 2 minutes. And then I'd relax, put things into perspective. It kept me from spinning out first thing in the morning. But at the root of it was identity. It was an identity question, like, who am I? And if you don't know, you're gonna look for it in all the wrong places. And I think yesterday we made the argument, and I still don't know if this is true or not. I don't know if it's just a man's problem. It's probably not just a man's issue. It gotta be men and women, but I can obviously only relate to the men's side. And I think it's maybe more so for men because we tend to root our identity in our job, right? Our job and our income. But the point is, not the right thing. That was yesterday. I want to branch off that a little bit here. So I'm reading this new, it's not new, it's new to me, a devotional book. It's by Paul Tripp. It's called New Morning Mercies. It's excellent. And lately, it's been about kingdoms and idols and slavery. So first thing, his point is we try to make our own little kingdoms. We try to be kings of our own kingdoms. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And it's so foolish because there's a way better kingdom right over there. It's not even way over there. It's right over there. Your kingdom's pathetic. My kingdom's pathetic. My kingdom is a mess and it's terrible and it's awful and it's anxiety ridden. But I want to be king. So I hold on to it. But there's a kingdom right over there that's way better and you can bask in it. The problem is you got to be a servant over there. You got to be a peasant. I'd rather be king. Yeah, my kingdom's terrible, but I'd rather be king of it. I'd rather be kingdom of a way worse kingdom than peasant in the greatest kingdom. That's the first thing. Then you have idols. So Paul Tripp tells the story of going to India. He went to some holy city of Hinduism, northern India, and he went into this temple, and he said he saw the most horrific idol he'd ever seen. And I'm just gonna be blunt here. It was, you walk in to this temple, and the temple had one thing. It had one idol there, and it was a giant penis. There's pictures online. Feel free to avail yourself to them. I chose not to show them here. And he said the Hindu pilgrims, they were emotional. They were like it was like a spiritual moment. And they laid down, they got on their knees and they're bowing down to it. Some people were kissing the base of the idol. And he said it was one of the darkest spiritual scenes I've ever seen. He said it was so spiritually oppressive that he had to like run out of there. And he left the temple thinking, thank God I'm not like these people. Thank God I'm not like these people. And then it hit him. And it hit me as I was reading it. The things we idolize in our lives are just as Paul Tripp said in his book, they're just as vomitous to God as that idol in that temple was to Paul and would be to us, right? So in our tiny little kingdoms, we set up these massive idols, and then we wonder why we're depressed and anxious and tired and unhealthy. It's because we become a slave to it. And that was yesterday's devotional. We are all slaves. The question is, you are a slave to whom or to what? We all give our hearts to something. To whom or to what do you give it? We have in America, we have this idea that we have an obsession with freedom. And for good reason, right? But we have this desire to be free. Politically, that's good. Spiritually, not good. It leads to chaos. We think the options are you got to be a slave to God, and we reject that. You're like, I don't want to be a slave to God. I want to be free. I don't want to be a slave to the oppressive rules of the church or the oppressive rules of the Bible, the oppressive rules of God. I don't want to be a slave. I'm going to be free. There's no such thing. You can't be free. You'll be enslaved by something. Choose your master wisely. You've been living a false choice. I've been living this false choice. I'm not going to live this God slavery thing. I'm going to be free over here. Nope. You're either going to be a slave to God or you're going to be a slave to something else. Choose your master wisely. Give up your kingdom. Throw away your idols. Choose your master. Give up your kingdom. Throw away your idols. Choose your master. Now, I can't just preach. I gotta make this relevant to the news of the day. So, back to Kobe Bryant. 2015, he wrote a nice little piece. He wrote a love letter to basketball. And it's really nice. He talks about being a 6-year-old boy, practicing his shot with his dad's rolled up socks. And he starts off saying, it was then when I fell in love with you. Basketball. That's when I fell in love with you. He goes on, he says this. He said, a love so deep, I gave you my all. From my mind and body to my spirit and soul. By the way, love the Lord your God with all your heart, body, mind, and strength. You gave a 6-year-old boy his Laker dream, and I'll always love you for it. But I can't love you obsessively for much longer. This season is all I have left to give. My heart can take the pounding. My mind can handle the grind. But my body knows it's time to say goodbye. And that's okay. I'm ready to let you go. And he did. He had an idol, and he let it go. He did not watch another NBA game for years until his daughter wanted to watch with him. So he put his kingdom aside, and he had a good kingdom. Well, it looked that way, right? From worldly perspectives, it looked like a good kingdom. He was able to put it aside. He said goodbye to his idol, basketball. He put that aside. And then he threw himself into something with way more lasting implications, his family, and then way more eternal implications, his faith. So I hope the big takeaway from Kobe, well, I'll speak for myself. the lesson I learned from his death is the obvious, right? Life is short, all that. But also, while you're here, get your priorities in line. Get them in line. Give up your kingdom. Throw away your idols. Choose your master. Coming up next, Michael Caputo. We're going to lay out the Ukraine hoax, get to the root of Soviet Union and Ukraine culture of corruption that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden got in the mix of, and the president was trying to root out. We'll break that all next. Michael Caputo. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I want to go right to our next guest, Michael Caputo, former advisor to President Trump, and has a long biography, which we'll get to. But in particular here, author of the new book, The Ukraine Hoax, and then also a new film of the same title as well. Mr. Caputo, how are you, sir?
Very good. Thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. I leave out your bio because I wanted to leave it to you. What are the most relevant aspects of your past life that led you to this book and the insight that we're going to talk about here in a minute?
I think my birth, but I was born in Fort Bragg with jump boots on, so my poor mother. But I ended in the 90s, after serving Republican presidents as a young man since the 1980s. In the 90s, President Bill Clinton sent me to Russia to meddle in their elections. I stayed for most of the entire decade of the 90s, coming home in 2000 when Vladimir Putin was made president. During that time, I worked a lot in Ukraine. Today, I still do work in Ukraine often, and I'm married to a Ukrainian. I have family in Ukraine, so I have a lot, I know a lot of people there, know a lot of people in and out of government. And I knew back in 2014 when Hunter Biden signed on as a board director at Burisma Energy, one of the most corrupt companies in Ukraine. I knew it was a cash out. I knew it was a scam, and I was following it since 2014. So this past summer, my wife and I decided, when we were going over there to visit family, I decided to shoot a documentary film about Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, about the Ukrainian government interfering in our 2016 elections. And when I got home in September, the whole story changed when the impeachment hoax started. So I made the film, which is airing on One American News at 10 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. But out of that grew a book, because I knew there was no way I could fit all these facts and figures into an hour-long documentary. And the bottom line of the book is this. This impeachment isn't just about protecting Joe Biden and his campaign. It's about keeping Hunter Biden out of prison. All the research I've done, all the digging that I've been through the last several months, all my experience in my years in Ukraine points to the fact that Hunter Biden and his partner, Devin Archer, were lobbying John Kerry and Vice President Joe Biden to protect their billionaire oligarch who owned Burisma. They did it without registering, and they're in violation of federal law, just like Paul Manafort.
Okay, I got a ton of questions. First of all, for everyone watching, a great sign that this is not a hack piece is the fact that you've been working on this since well before everyone else even knew the name Hunter Biden, right? So I think that's a major credibility point for you there. Let me back it up half a step. Can you help us understand the scope of corruption in the Soviet Union and the Ukraine, right? Like, we grew up in America, we have our types of corruption, but what is Soviet Union corruption?
Well, I'll tell you, the Soviet Union was corrupt all the way to its core. It was a rub down, a shakedown of all the people of the different republics and different satellite states to keep them poor, so that small groups could get rich and that the authoritarian leaders could keep control of them. When the Soviet Union broke up, we ended up with multiple different fiefdoms of corruption, including places like Georgia, Ukraine, Belarus, many other nations. Ukraine is really not all that different from other former Soviet Union republics and satellites. But what's important to understand is the corruption in Ukraine is oftentimes fed and even multiplied by Western and even former Soviet diplomats. You know, a great example is Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State delivered billions and billions of dollars in aid to the government of Ukraine. And during that time, Ukraine turned around and was the largest national donor to the Clinton Foundation to the tune of many, many millions of dollars. This goes on in many different ways. After Hillary Clinton left as Secretary of State, President Obama made Joe Biden viceroy of Ukraine. He put him in charge of Ukraine policy. And 50 days later, Hunter Biden joined the board of one of the most corrupt companies in the country, making millions of dollars. It's just another Clinton Foundation shakedown, just a different way to spend the money.
Give me that timeline one more time. So sure. Obama, Biden, Hunter, like what's that timeline you just mentioned?
Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, up until just prior to what we refer to as the Maidan massacre, when in February 2014, 130 people were killed by snipers on the central square in Kiev. Most Americans don't remember this, but it caused a major coup and a change of leadership to a president who was very desperate for the approval of Barack Obama and Hunter Biden. Right after Hillary Clinton left, this massacre and coup happened. After the coup, President Obama simply said, you know, Joe Biden, you take charge of this. He made him basically viceroy of Ukraine. All things Ukraine went through Joe Biden. So within within a month and a half, his son joined the board of Burisma Energy and started making millions. Now, one of the major things that Joe Biden was doing with Ukraine was coordinating the disbursement of $3 billion in loan guarantees to the energy companies of Ukraine. Let that sink in for a minute. He was bringing billions, not 1 billion, like we hear in some of the stories, $3 billion in energy money, that much of which would go to the company where Hunter Biden was working. And lo and behold, when that money arrived, Hunter Biden got paid around $83,000 a month. Not just Hunter, but his business partner also got $83,000 a month. Devin Archer. Devin Archer was very close to Secretary of State John Kerry. So this, you know, the idea that this stinks and this money is moving around, it's all awful. And it's a grift that's been going on more and more for the last 20 years. But frankly, the very clear violation of federal law here is that Hunter Biden and Devin Archer were working directly with Joe Biden as vice president and John Kerry as Secretary of State to protect an oligarch. An oligarch. They kept him off the 2014 sanctions list with illegal lobbying, and they killed an investigation into his corruption with their illegal lobbying. And John Kerry's office and Joe Biden's office made sure whatever Hunter Biden and Devin Archer wanted happened.
Okay, so you painted a picture there, are very articulately and way more. I was under this impression, I think the media has painted this perception that this was all very accidental, right? Yeah, he happened to be vice president and sure, Hunter, blah, blah, blah. But one key that you mentioned there, I want to ask you, and excuse my ignorance. Obama appointed Biden viceroy? What does that mean?
It's like czar, you know, like Obama had an energy czar, et cetera. It's just, you can call him Ukraine czar, Ukraine viceroy, or whatever you want to call him. He was appointed all things Ukraine by Obama.
Really? And so can you just, like, that to me is super important to this whole story. Like, how do you know that, or what did that look like for Biden?
Obama made an announcement to the public and made it very clear. And Biden wore that sash for the remainder of his time as vice president. It was very clear that he was in charge of everything with Ukraine. And I'll tell you, think about it. This is not just a Democrat thing, by the way. It was chiefly a Democrat thing because for 8 years, we had the Obama administration in charge of foreign policy, in charge of the billions of dollars of aid that were going to places like Ukraine and elsewhere where this rub down is going on. But at the same time, remember, we have 535 representatives and senators in the United States Congress. Think about how many of their kids, their wives, their brothers are getting rich in countries like Ukraine. I can tell you, if you knew, it would blow your mind.
Okay, so I want to belabor this point a little more. I was under this impression that Biden's VP, and he goes to lots of different countries, right? You saw that video where he talked about, fire this investigator or else we're not going to give you your money, whatever. And I'm like, oh, well, Biden does that with countries all over the place. He's the VP, whatever. But no. If he was purposefully and specifically given in this country, and his son wasn't just on some board of some energy company in other countries, but that same country, like that is so obviously corrupt. And that part either has not been said by the media or I've just conveniently missed that. That's incredibly important part to the story.
I'll tell you, and this kind of grift goes on. It doesn't go on between the United States and Britain, or United States and Germany, or United States and Japan, established nations. This grift goes on in emerging nations that are desperate for the aid that comes from America. And there are people, bad actors, in the middle of those transactions that make sure that a little bit of it sticks to their fingers or to their son's fingers. This goes on in America increasingly. And I can tell you, I spoke to President Trump about this back in 2013 when I was advising him as he considered running for governor of New York. And it enraged him. And we talked about it since then. This kind of corruption just makes him crazy. So I can tell you this. There are some people who think Donald Trump plays 3D chess. I've known him 30 years. He doesn't play 3D chess, but he certainly plays chess. And I can tell you that I can see by the timeline that he tried to investigate this after he became president, and the Obama-appointed ambassador, Marie Yovanovitch, resisted him, stopped him at every turn. She didn't just deny visas to people who were coming over from the government to provide evidence against Biden, as well as the president of Ukraine, who was meddling in America's elections to help Hillary Clinton in 2016. She was stopping that. And when he realized that his official functional government was rogue, he decided to go around it with an emissary in Giuliani, like any normal president would. Presidents throughout history have appointed emissaries for particularly knotty situations. And this one was all knotted up. So he brought in Giuliani, who was in there doing yeoman's work, disrupting things, upsetting the apple cart and this whole, grift that has been going on for so many years. And I'll tell you, right now, I spoke to, in my film and in my book, I do a long interview with the former director of the Ukrainian FBI, two-time director of the Ukrainian FBI, perhaps the number one lawman in all of Ukraine. And he believes these are real crimes. The people on the Ukraine side of things believe there are real crimes committed here, and they want to investigate. And Yovanovitch was stopping it, so Donald Trump relieved her of her duties. And they're still doing it, Mike. Right now, the members of parliament in Ukraine want to investigate the same things Donald Trump was calling about. And the American embassy in Kiev is telling them, don't do what the president tells you to do. They're completely gone rogue.
Okay, I have a ton more questions, and I just realized how much time flew. Can you stick around for one more quick segment?
Of course.
Michael Caputo, the book and the movie is called The Ukraine Hoax. So you're saying it's this Saturday, One American News at 10 p.m. Eastern to watch it. You can also buy it.
They can pick it up at theukrainehoax.com.
Okay, yeah, just go ahead and do that too. Okay, more of Michael Caputo coming up next. True story, Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I want to get right back to Michael Caputo. He's the author of the book, The Ukraine Hoax, also has a documentary coming out this weekend, The Ukraine Hoax. Go to the website, theukrainehoax.com. You can buy it and find out more information right there. Michael, thanks for sticking around. Let's talk about the newer president of the Ukraine. Tell us what we need to know about this guy and what the people of Ukraine think about this guy.
Well, the new president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is an actor and a comedian. In a lot of ways, people in Ukraine compare him to make him, say that he's their Donald Trump. He was sick, famously sick and tired of the corruption in the country. And some strong people in Ukraine asked him, okay, well, put your money where your mouth is, run for president. And he won with over 70% of the vote. He's incredibly popular there.
Wow.
He's a reformer. He wants this corruption gone. He's aligning himself with all the right people. And he's somebody that the American people can trust. And frankly, he should not be blamed for what the previous president did, trying to interfere in America's 2016 elections to help Hillary Clinton. He mustn't be blamed for that, but I'll tell you, the Ukraine government was officially involved.
Okay, tell us about that. What are you talking about? That's a bold claim, sir.
Sure. Petro Poroshenko came in after the massacre in January of 2014, and he was supported by the United States Embassy and George Soros and others, the European Union. He won an election in March after the massacre, after the coup. And he was desperate to get as close as he could to the United States government to get as much aid as possible. And he is also famously corrupt. There was moves to investigate him for his corruption, and the Obama appointees in the United States Embassy made the new government stop their investigations of the former president. He was close to Biden and Obama, and close to Hillary Clinton as well. And when she was became the candidate, it appears that in January of 2016. The Obama White House invited over all the investigators inside Ukraine for meetings in the White House, where they told them they wanted chapter and verse on Paul Manafort, who would emerge as emerge as President Trump's campaign chairman. Chapter and verse and reopen investigations into Paul Manafort. They went back to Ukraine, and within weeks after that meeting, they presented a fake ledger, a black book that showed payments, illegal payments made to Paul Manafort. By August, that black ledger ended up forcing Paul Manafort to quit the campaign. Normally, when you take out a campaign chairman or a campaign manager, you can cripple the campaign. But not in Donald Trump's case. You know, he was his campaign manager, as everyone knows. So it didn't kill the campaign. They went forward and did even more. They had an operative being paid by the Democratic National Committee who would go over to the Ukrainian embassy in Washington and work with the ambassador and the secretaries of the Ukrainian embassy, doing research and getting information on Paul Manafort to help make sure he got forced out, trying to find information about Trump and Trump enterprises and what they were, businesses they were working on in the former Soviet Union. She as much as admitted it in media coverage, so did the embassy. That's official Ukrainian government interference in our 2016 elections. If you remember, the Russia collusion narrative was based on far, far less evidence. So it's very clear from the research I did for my book, The Ukraine Hoax, that the former president of Ukraine was coordinating a series of activities that were interfering in our 2016 elections in favor of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. And Manafort's in jail, and Hunter Biden is not. Take us inside, we've got a few minutes here. Take us inside the mind of someone like a Joe Biden, where they would even think to do this type of corruption, right? Like that they would even think it's okay to put his son in charge of this energy company. He knows nothing about anything. And to think that he could get away with it, and it looks like he might be getting away with it, right? But what do we need to know about the mind of someone like that?
Well, I think when it comes to the big grifters like Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, they understand completely that they're involved in a corrupt enterprise. I can tell you that Burisma Energy is famously corrupt. I mean, everybody in Ukraine, all the way down to the washerwoman, knows Burisma is a criminal enterprise. It is everybody, you couldn't go to a restaurant, give a Burisma business card without getting a cross look. There's no way Hunter Biden didn't know that was a corrupt enterprise. Here's how it went down. Think about Joe Biden, who is soon to leave the vice presidency, didn't really think, maybe dreamed to be president, but thought that this was going to be the end of his political career. And he says, I don't really have the money that Barack's got. Barack somehow walked away with $20 million, right? So he didn't get rich. Hillary Clinton's got $1 billion in the Clinton Foundation. He figured, I'm going to get mines, right? So here's what went down. Right after that coup where all those people were murdered, all the billionaire oligarchs around the president who was removed by the coup and fled to Russia, they fled as well, many of them to Russia. Every single one of them lost everything because of sanctions against them. No business dealings they could do. Their money was seized in foreign accounts where they kept it. All of them were wiped out by United States sanctions. So this billionaire who owned Burisma contacted, I can't prove this, I believe, he contacted Devon Archer, who the same day went to the White House to meet with Joe Biden, and he stayed with him for hours into the night. Hours into the night. And you assume he's talking about this because 2 days later, Devon Archer joins the board of Burisma. And just less than a month after that, Hunter Biden joins the board. The grift started with a White House meeting. So you imagine yourself as Joe Biden from Scranton, right? Lunch bucket Joe, looking in his lunch bucket, and he doesn't even see anymore half a ham sandwich. And he's thinking, I'm going to get mine. And Devon Archer comes to his office, and he meets with him for hours, probably meandering around, rationalizing, putting his son on the board of this company. And he says, okay, go for it. Then his son gets into it. He figures he can quietly get rich, but it blows up in his face for many different reasons, one of which we elected a president who wasn't going to put up with it anymore. Now, Joe Biden didn't think anybody would step in between him and his truckload of money because nobody stepped in front of Barack's and nobody stepped in front of Hillary's. That's how it ended up.
Wow.
And that's how all these guys are deep into this. By the way, Barack Obama's right-hand man on energy, former government employee, is now on the board of Naftogaz, one of the 3 largest companies in Ukraine, notoriously corrupt, paying their executives millions of dollars in bonuses. Somehow he went from riding around on airplanes with Joe Biden to a lucrative board seat at the 3rd largest company and the most corrupt and one of the most corrupt countries in the world. It just goes on and
how do I get a board seat? I need a board seat. I don't like that. Seems like the cushiest gig ever. Okay, let me ask you this. I think this might be the last question. That phone call, right? The phone call. What do you think Trump's motivation was in asking for an investigation? So let me, and before I'll let you answer, do you give any credence to the idea from the Democrats that he was doing it purposefully to take down his top political opponent?
I do not believe that that's what happened. I can't say I was in the president's head at the time, but I have a little bit of history with the guy. We also see that he was trying to get Yovanovitch removed and trying to encourage an investigation long before Joe Biden became a presidential candidate. I can tell you that I was in the White House with my family. If you remember, the Mueller investigation suddenly ended, and the president and I were free to talk again because we couldn't talk for the full duration of the Mueller investigation. He called me a day or so after the report was filed and said, "Why don't you and your family come to the White House and catch up with me and the First Lady?" So my wife and I and our 2 little girls and my mother-in-law went to the White House on April, I think, 28th, and talked to the president for upwards of an hour with the First Lady. And my mother-in-law is there from Ukraine, right? My wife is Ukrainian. And the president meets my mother-in-law, who doesn't speak English, and he says, "Ukraine, what a great country, great people." And she's like, barely understands him. And that's the only thing he says about Ukraine to me. Nothing else. Not a word. Not one. And I can tell you, the president knows of my provenance and how long I spent in Russia. We were just coming off a bogus Russia investigation. If he wanted to know something about Ukraine, if he thought Ukraine was something that was going to become an issue, he'd have said something to me. He didn't say a word. So I'm going to give you a little bit more credence here. Like I said, I don't believe the president plays 3D chess. I believe he plays chess. I believe he ran at this issue across the space of months and realized that his government was too corrupt to investigate it. They're still too corrupt to investigate it. Our government is still too corrupt to allow Ukraine to investigate it. We are now officially more corrupt than Ukraine. Think about that. The president understood from the days that, long before I ever talked to him about government corruption, he understood that he was either going to bust this up or he was going to leave it to survive him. And I'm sure he understood there were 15, 20 people on that phone call. He understood that there were probably 4 or 5 people there getting paid by Barack Obama. right? He understood these people were certainly going to chat about it. And I'm certain he thought to himself, either I just go along and get along, or I risk my presidency and I try and bust up this criminal activity. And he chose the latter. You know why?
You mentioned earlier that like the president has like a visceral, he does not like corruption.
He hates,
you said that, right?
He doesn't even like paying people money for what they're worth, you know? He's so cheap, he can't stand money wasted. You understand? He is he is thrifty as they come. He can't stand the idea of wasting money. It's just never going to happen under his watch. And the idea that it's stolen drives him wild. Remember, Donald Trump was in construction in New York City. You know, Donald Trump was in the casino business in Atlantic City. He knows what corruption smells like. He saw it most of his career, and he managed not to step in it, if you look at his record. People try to accuse him of being involved with the mob and being involved with Russia, but it's just talk. Donald Trump knows corruption because he brushed up against it through his whole life in the New York City construction business and the casino business in Atlantic City, and he can't bear it. He can't bear it.
That's the key. That is the key motive right there. That's so good. All right, Michael Caputo, The Ukraine Hoax, theukrainehoax.com for more information on the book and the documentary. Well done, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
We'll talk again. Mike Slater, True Story. Spread the word.